Hi, this is Ted Moorman, and you're listening to the Lake Forest Podcast.
Welcome to the Lake Forest Podcast, a podcast about the lovely city of Lake Forest, featuring topics like local news, sports, music, people, food, and politics. My name is Pete, and I'm joined with the voice of the Lake Forest Scouts football and basketball, Skoo Walker. How you doing, Skoo?
Doing good, Pete. How are you? Couple more days till the big guy comes.
Hopefully, he doesn't get stuck in a chimney like me. Hey, we got a special guest today, Ted Moorman, longtime District 115 school board member and part of last year's Let's Do Better campaign. But before we get to Ted, we got to sponsor the show, Shark Guy Beach Fishing. They're the premier South Florida beach fishing experience out of Longboat Key, Florida. That's by Tampa, Skoo. Their world-renowned captains not only put you on the fish, but they'll help you and your family make a memory of a lifetime. Check them out on Facebook or at sharkguybeachfishing.com to schedule an outing. Shark Guy is your guy for your next charter. Like that?
Are you the shark guy? Who's the shark guy?
I'm not the shark guy. You have to go to sharkguy.com and figure it out. We'd also like to thank our Patreon supporters, Reverend Luke Back from the Church of the Holy Spirit, Matt A., Elizabeth B., Costa, Lance, and Domo Origato Otto.
Regato.
I think he's our favorite. Ted Moorman, welcome to the show, my friend. Please give us your background for the new people who have just moved into town.
Well, thank you, Pete and Skoo. Good seeing you again. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Yeah, I was born and raised in Lake Forest, went through Lake Forest Public Schools, graduated with Skoo's wife, actually, in 19...
Whoa! Just the aging people here. We'll edit that out in post when she's listening to it.
Okay, I won't say a while ago.
Nothing to see here, Pam. Continue, Ted.
We're all good. And went off to the University of Illinois, then joined the Air Force and flew airplanes for 25 years with them. Joined the United Airlines and flew for them for 25 years. And obviously, I'm not that old, so I was doing both at the same time as a reservist and a United pilot. Live in Lake Forest, and I'm glad to hear about our sponsor in Longboat, because actually we have a house on Minnesota Key, which is just down the road a little bit. We're going to have to check them out.
Oh, that's right. Tell them Skoo sent you. No, better yet, tell them Pam sent you over.
So I'll do that.
So Ted, number one, thank you for your service. Number two, is it true you survived a plane crash? What is the story behind that, if it is true?
That is true. I quit flying in 2006 because I was a passenger on an airplane going to Iraq. Somebody else was flying the airplane from Dover to Spain, and then I was going to fly the plane from Spain down to Baghdad. We didn't make it that far because we crashed shortly after departure from Dover, the Air Force Base. Had fortunately 18 people on board. Everyone survived, and I'd like to say I walked away, but actually I was airlifted away and have a spinal cord injury as a result. So but I'm happy to be alive, and so I'm back with you. Yeah. So,
well, Ted, glad you're here. Yeah, you are a survivor, man. Seriously, thank you for your service, Ted. Glad you're here, man. So Ted, you're a real estate guy too, huh?
Yeah, actually, when I ended up with more free time when I wasn't flying, I had always been dabbling in real estate, buying houses and, turning around and leasing. So got a number of houses in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and actually also down in, like I said, Minnesota Key that we rent as well. Gulfront, beautiful living down there. And like I said, we come back now for the holidays to be with the kids and grandkids. And but I think more and more we're becoming Floridians. And
6 months in a
it's
day,
different
right,
world.
Ted?
Pardon me?
6 months in a day.
That's a fact.
And you got proof.
Everyone's becoming Floridians.
Yeah, it's really so different down there. You know, we just flew back, and you know, Susan, my wife, sent me to Sunset to pick some stuff up, and I walk in the store, and everybody's looking at me, and I realize everybody's got a mask on except me, because in Florida you don't wear masks, and there doesn't seem to be a problem. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my, you know, I'm a pariah. So I had to go to the service desk and get a mask. And then they let me into the enclave of Sunset Foods.
So Ted, speaking of pariah, my first experience with you was a member of the Let's Do Better campaign when I was on the caucus. You were the evil doers.
Oh yeah, let me tell you about it. Yeah, when you go against Caucus, you take your life in your own hands.
Ted's a veteran of that.
Yeah. Well, I first ran.
Well, first of all, you were on the school board 115 for 8 years, right? You did the
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're
that, and then thank you for staying awake for all the meetings.
Well, yeah. Well, now it's even worse. Everybody's sitting there wearing masks, and like I said, in Florida, you get used to not wearing a mask and breathing fresh air.
So how did that work out? Because when you the Let's Do Better, I think I was just 1 year into the caucus. I didn't know any better. They asked me to pony up some money to put in the sign making funds, and you guys and Lori Fitzgerald were the dark force, the evil doers over there. We had to fight you, and I'm like, wait a minute, this dude's a vet, and he did the school board for 8 years. How can this guy be so bad? What was going on back then? What should I have known?
Well, actually, why don't we start at the beginning?
Okay, go.
When I first ran in, I guess 2012, against the caucus, and I was the dark horse, and knocked off the caucus candidate, which they were not happy with. But they threw everything at me, including the kitchen sink. I don't know if you know, but I was sued and had racked up almost $250,000 in legal fees from one of the caucus supported candidates, or not candidates, but board members. They didn't like what I had to say, but after $250,000 spent in court, by the way, I won the case. It was just basically harassment.
What the hell did you say, or you can't say?
Well, no, I just said one of, when they did the renovation of the high school the first time, there were two people on the committee that were, the selection committee for the contractor. And one person begged off because she didn't like what was going on. So it ended up being a committee of one. And it just so happened her family's business won the contract. But they didn't win it at first. They weren't low qualified bidder. And then they stopped it and then reopened the contract. And surprisingly, that business came in just a few dollars underneath. So
what was that renovation for?
Just for the high, putting in the
building
glass cubes, and basically when they did, it was about the $50 million renovation, which did some stuff, but it left a lot of necessary life safety stuff undone. So I kind of attacked him on it, and anyway, so I was
got it.
It went on for 2 years, and I won. And the person that was suing me never showed up in court once. But the family also has a law firm in the city, so I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
I don't want to get sued again.
Yeah.
It keeps sounding like I wonder if those board members are still there because it sure sounds like them.
No, no.
I'm sorry.
They're all off the board. And,
Okay.
but
Just a
anyway,
resounding theme.
That the last name is spelled Walker.
I'll go with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I prefer to be anonymous.
Okay.
Ted, we feel like being anonymous too, but there's so many people that listen that we don't know now. So we
But they
say
but they say they don't listen.
They don't listen.
Yeah. Well, Skoo, like you, Pam, we're all kind of been around here forever. So,
right. We know the real deal.
Yeah. Well, and, I ran for the board because, like after my accident, I had a little more free time on my hands, and I didn't like what was going on at school, so I had two choices: either just sit around like most people and bitch about it, or do something. So I was stupid and decided to run against, or I should say,
Ted,
for the school board, not against anything.
So Ted, that's obviously this, we all know this now. That's a no-no to run against the caucus. But what was all entailed in your process to do that?
Well, a lot of research, and at that time, since it was a contested election, the League of Women Voters decided to have a meet the candidates thing at Lake Forest Library, and I was all boned up. I knew all the details and the facts, and it kind of shone through that I knew what I was talking about. And one of the people I knocked off was kind of clueless, and I shouldn't put it that way. Just what hadn't researched, didn't really know what the issues were that were important, in the operation of the high school. So,
got it.
And you're one of the few that have run up against the caucus and won a spot.
Yeah, and running against the caucus is not for the faint of heart. I'll give you that much. So anyway, then the second term, the caucus said, their feeling was, if you can beat them, you might as well join them. And they asked me to run under the caucus banner, which I did, which is kind of funny. And
that's hilarious.
You're good enough now, Ted. You're good enough now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You're the Antichrist a couple of years ago. Now you're great.
Yeah. Now I'm one of them, and I said, well, yeah. I don't care. I mean, I'm doing this for the betterment of the community. Right. Didn't really care much, and I didn't think much of the caucus only because 4 years prior they beat me up pretty bad.
Right.
But and it was interesting because then when I ran again under the caucus banner, I was the #1 vote getter. And then when I became the pariah again in the last election, I was the bottom vote getter because they threw everything at me. I was accused of being a pervert and a pedophile and, following kids on social media, which, as you saw me getting on your call, I'm pretty inept, and I don't do social media. So, and they did everything else. My emails, my school emails for the last 4 years were FOIA'd, and they were just looking to dissect and tear me apart. And the interesting thing is, if you run against the caucus, they say you're unvetted, and then they you're an unknown quantity. Well, it turns out they did 2 background checks on me when I first ran, and to dig up dirt. Fortunately, I was pretty clean. So the one thing they did come up with is that they said I lied and was a Phi Beta Kappa scholar at University of Illinois. And that was my mistake. I said I was, but I wasn't. It was actually, I was a Phi Beta Kappa scholar at Cal State when I got my MBA. So it was actually a higher level.
Shame on you, Ted.
Yeah, so when I pointed that out, then it got quiet again.
It'd be interesting if they did background checks on the executive board of the caucus. I wonder what you would find.
I was just gonna say that
interesting stuff.
they do more vetting on a candidate that's running against the caucus than they will.
Well, yeah, the anti-candidate.
They do less vetting of people to get on the caucus committee as well as the candidates. As long as you agree with them, the candidate.
I would tend to agree with that.
It's unbelievable. And then they spend our money to do that.
Yeah. Well, part of the caucus, Pete, as you probably saw, the committee of 40, and that makes up the caucus. And the interesting thing is, according to the caucus, we're all members of the caucus because you're a resident, so you get to be a member until you decide to run against their chosen. Then all of a sudden you're the enemy that must be vilified.
Evil.
Yeah, evil is a good.
I've always said if you're going to run against the caucus, you have to be well adept at what you're running for. And obviously, Ted, you were. But for people thinking, now maybe I want to run against them, what do you think, Ted, they need to do?
Get 30 grand together.
Well, I'm trying to get at that. What's the all cost?
Well, out of pocket, when I first ran, it was about $5,000, and I was never comfortable raising money, so I raised about $2,500 and then ponied up the rest on my own. To me, it was easier to pay for it than grovel and ask other people for money. Just I guess I'm not a really good politician, but just like in the military, you just want to get things done.
Yeah.
So that was the goal. My goal wasn't to raise money and build a some sort of team to go against the caucus. But again, caucus is we're all members until you step outside, and then all of a sudden you are public enemy number one. Like I said,
or your Pete Jansen.
Well, but again, seriously, the people I ran with in the last election were all good people, and all would have. I think the school board would be better served with at least some of them getting on, because every one of them was a smart person. And one of the problems with I found even on the school board, and nothing against my fellow board members, because some of them, like Dave and Tom Nemekis, and were all good, but the board consistently was slammed by the admin with last minute facts that we had to vote on in 2 minutes without doing any research, and that was basically the standard. Admin recommends, board approves, and you see that in the meeting. There's no dissent, very little conversation, because actually all the decisions are made in the executive session before the board meeting. So the board meeting's really more, I hate to say fluff, but yeah, it's just kind of here's what we're approving everything, because nothing gets disapproved, in the open meeting. So, I wish there was more debate, and that we had a better process for, vetting issues before we had to vote on them. I think would be my biggest complaint, and maybe they fixed it. I don't know, because now I'm like everybody else on the outside in the cold, so don't know what's going on anymore. So I'm not going to impugn anyone. I'm just going to assume they're all doing a great job.
You can run again, right? I know you did your full 8 years, but
well, I could, but I'm going to be a Floridian, so I'm not I won't be a resident. So maybe I'll go be a muckraker down in Florida.
Yeah.
Hey, Ted, you were a couple months ago when they had all those crazy school board meetings and they canceled one and all that. Do you think the board handled that the right way?
No, shutting down the meeting is not the right thing. I think you need to let people talk. and I'd open it, let them vent. And if they have a legitimate issue, it should be heard. And like Forrest, I went to the next board meeting after that fiasco, and it was interesting because I was there to thank the board, and especially the superintendent, because I'm also with the American Legion, and we put up a flagpole and an American flag in the back of Deer Path School. So we had a ceremony, and I was just going in to thank them, and I was kind of surprised to see, I think there were 4 officers standing in the background, and it's like, this is like Forrest, and to have armed protection for the board, I thought was a little bit on the silly side.
Well, I just thought they had, at least my opinion on when it's given the time for the public to speak. I mean, aren't the board members supposed to just zip it and not say anything and just let them speak
that is
on the next agenda item? It seems like they were taunting them more than anything.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a back and forth dialogue. It's,
right.
People get during public comment.
Especially when they're timing them.
Yeah. So yeah, you have it exactly right. We're not supposed to respond. It's a chance for the community to speak their piece, and if they bring up good issues, then we'll take it under advisement. That's the way it's supposed to go.
I just thought if they would have just kept quiet, the public would have spoke. They would have gone to the next thing. But it just is back and forth. People just started getting more heated, and it got. I kind of blame the board for that.
Rightly so. Like I said, the board's not supposed to respond. It's the community's opportunity to speak, and it's not supposed to be a back and forth. So then I think, like you said, everybody should have had a chance to say their piece and then probably go on their way.
Right.
Well, people are pissed, these people that are getting on the school boards, and it gets down to the caucus and the selection process. Who oversees the caucus, Ted? It's a private entity, but the mayor receives these selections to approve. But if there's no repercussions for their actions, should there be oversight?
I feel there should be, because when you just said, I think it's the executive board, 5 people who make the decisions and recommend to the rest of the caucus. It's like, here's what we've decided on, and here's people we're putting forth. And you talk about like city council, they get elected, the aldermen, and the same thing. But most of the boards and commissions are appointed positions. The only ones that aren't, I think, city council and the 2 school boards. Everybody else is appointed. And I'll point out that Caucus appointed representatives have done some really bad things over the years. It's like when Bob Kiley was charged with a crime for funneling $200,000 to a lobby firm. The city wasn't involved in that at all. That was the state's attorney's office through Waukegan. And then after it was all said and done, the city council voted to pay his legal fees, and he got to retire with his nice $250,000 retirement salary. Things like that are, we weren't involved, and we shouldn't use taxpayer money to make him whole, because he did do wrong, and the people in the 4th Ward didn't want the 3rd rail, set of rail tracks, which he was pushing, and some business people were pushing, because they were hoping to get an Amtrak stop in Westlake Forest. But the people in the 4th Ward did not want it and opposed it vehemently. And then to find out they were paying for a lobby firm to push it, it kind of reeks. And that's where, any organization that is kind of a closed organization, which the caucus is. I mean, like I said, you got to have a tough skin to run against the caucus because they will try to bury you.
Well, it's
and they really should. I mean, if
no, they shouldn't. It should be.
I mean, if there's a contested election, I always kind of have said that that's a frailty of the caucus, since everyone in the city is a member of the caucus. If someone's running opposed to the caucus election, then that process was broken somewhere along the line, where they didn't interview that person or bring them in and get them a fair shake.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think the caucus does good in getting volunteers, and because there are a lot of boards and commissions, like the library board, and all the other boards that if you can't sleep at night, you watch channel 18 and get to see the various commissions run through their meetings. That's just preservation and building review. But and again, the caucus does a great job of finding people, vetting them, and nominating them to be on boards. But I think it should stop there. They shouldn't become a political arm, and that's what they do. Because, Pete, as you know, when they decide on their candidates and then it gets contested, all 40 people in the caucus are supposed to get 40 people, in which 1,600 people to vote for the caucus candidates to freeze out the interlopers. And really, most of our elections, winning candidates have around 1,600 votes. So that's what it was in the school boards. So basically, they try to jam through their candidate, and they also have these snowbird addresses for the all the elderly snowbirds that are down in Florida who vote remotely, and they're told, hey, vote for the caucus candidate. The other people are scary. And like I said, the 4 people that ran on the Let's Do Better were all really good people and solid citizens of the community, and they didn't deserve the trashing they got.
So Ted, who do you think's running the caucus? Because it's the president comes from being the past vice president. Is there something besides?
Right. It's just a chain. They all move up, and they take their turn. So it's really the executive board that runs the caucus, and basically you become an insider. You're an insider, and then that's when you get to move up into the caucus hierarchy, and it's politics.
Yeah.
In the early days, it was just the Awencia Club guys sitting around smoking cigars.
And it seems like lately the exec committee on the caucuses, somehow these people, when they come off, they end up on some nice boards and commissions.
Yeah, well, that's I'm not going to say somebody that was a senior member of the caucus is now on the school board, and I like them, but so I'm not going to say anything bad. But yeah, it is. You pay your dues in the caucus, then you get basically whatever social job you want in the community.
Well, it's a lot easier for an exec person to get on a committee than it is for a regular caucus committee person. I get that point.
Well, and I think
that's why you got a big strive to be on the exec council. if you have a board or commission aspiration.
And then you wield power, and you get to go to cocktail parties and have a good time. But Pete, have you found you can run amok in the caucus hierarchy, and next thing you know, you're on the outs.
Well, you can be on the outs, but especially with what's going on now, when the whole thing about the caucus is there's not supposed to be an agenda. And when the executive, when you have the executive, the president and the vice president saying, hey, all things being equal, we got to select a female because we have a female coming off. We need a female coming in. You have the male who, in my opinion, did a far superior job in the interview, gets tossed because of his gender, that's when it's like, okay, there's got to go. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it's not who's best; it's who's connected or who fits, a certain window, or which is really unfortunate because some of these boards, like the high school board, we wielded a $50 million annual budget, so they can do a lot of good, and they can also squander a lot of money, and sometimes they do, which look at West Campus. That turned out to be a white elephant, and back in the day, it was only used as a high school for a few years, and it was actually built by a company that usually built prisons, and it looks like a prison, and it didn't last long.
Now,
but then when
hold on, Ted, for the new people that tune in or just moved in the area, are you talking about like that glassy area on the high school, or what are you guys
West
talking
Campus,
about?
where the football
West
field
Campus, where the football field is. That whole
we went to school there, freshman, sophomore year.
Yes, we did. It was like a prison with little windows and.
Okay.
But
how did they squander money? Educate me.
Well, they did it by building it in the first place because they thought there was all this growth in Lake Forest, but actually doing the research, we had a peak in enrollment, and then it was going to be going down, and that's why all the kids were able to go back to East Campus. And originally, the high school board was looking at knocking down West Campus, but it was too expensive to knock it down, so they tried to reuse, find a reuse, and most of the so now the administration for D115 and D67 are there, and then the downstairs used to be a theater company, and there's also the special ed group leases at the building, and then we have all of our sports.
Athletics.
We have a gymnasium, weightlifting room, and then of course the ball fields, tennis courts, and of course under the lights are beautiful football field
without a track. Forgot about
without
that.
a track. Well, I couldn't believe it didn't have a track when.
Hey Pete, that's what they call squandering money. Is every high school has turf and a track. We forgot the track.
Yeah, we did. Well, we left it at East Campus. So, yeah, and when we just right before I left, they were worried that the field wasn't going to pass the bounce test and would have to be replaced. So kids don't get concussions. They did the bounce test and determined it had 4 to 5 years left. But we spent $600,000 ripping it out and replacing it anyway because, hey, it's the money was programmed, so let's do it. But that would have been the time to put in the track when you're ripping out the turf, and all you got to do is move, the one, the visitors stand, back a little bit, and it would have been easy to do. But
so why did that happen? Like, with all the scrutiny they have now over this new artificial turf, we're worried about water bottles and stuff. They couldn't figure out they needed a track back then. Like, what?
Is there someone running?
I think
there's a superintendent running everything they wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had X number of dollars, and they, it's kind of like you build an airplane that, well, we can't afford to put engines on it, but we got
the guy. Damn it. The guy running it at the time wasn't too
sharp.
And
he
was sharp for himself.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's issues with the swimming pool.
Little short, isn't it?
It's a few feet short to be a regulation IHSA competitive pool.
That was one of the main goals of the pool and the natatorium being built, was to host IHSA events, but oops,
Oops.
not
Well, yeah,
big enough.
no. Well, just those cheap Lake Foresters and Lake Bluffers and Millwooders need to pony up more money next time.
Right.
It's their fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
The construction
Ted,
is right.
we've pointed a lot of fingers here. How do we fix this stuff? 86 years of
Well,
the same crap. It's like people are complaining, but yet not a lot of people want to do something about it. Again, I want a vibrant downtown, but I don't want to vote for anything that will bring more people into the area because it's going to screw up my property. Blah blah blah.
Well, don't get me started on that because you look at.
That's why we got John here, Ted.
Come on, Ted.
Get this started.
Okay. Well, anyway, we'll start with McDonald's. When McDonald's forced the city to spend $500,000 in legal fees trying to keep them out of where Burger King ended up going, and it was interesting. Skoo, you probably remember Steve Yastro. I don't like dropping names, but his dad was chief corporate counsel for McDonald's, and I happened to be on an airplane flying back with him. We're both sitting in first class, and I brought it up, and he said, "Well, Lake Forest has said if we put in the McDonald's, it's just going to be a magnet for gang crime problems and trash, and the city was going to try and keep it out." And he goes, "We had unlimited funds. We weren't going to let it happen." And so the city spent $500,000 trying to keep them out. And, finally, McDonald's
put in a Burger King.
Yeah, they put in a Burger King. But you see it also with Whole Foods wanted to go out on 60, and the city, had so many restrictions that they finally said, "The heck with it," and moved to Vernon Hills.
Right.
More
tax revenue gone.
And then Costco, tried to go where the city services building is, which is why the city services building was put where it is, was to keep Costco out.
That's kind of ironic.
Yeah, now Metallica gets $2 million plus in sales tax revenue, and Lake Forest pleads poverty.
Don't forget about the gas station and car wash.
Yeah, but we got that. And it's funny that you speak of gas stations. That's one of the things they said about Costco. If their gas station being right next to Wetwoods is the Exxon Valdez waiting to happen. Never mind that the city has a gas station out there to service all their vehicles, and it's horribly inefficient.
Casey Erlacher, stop laughing at us.
Well,
loving it.
Okay, and I got one more gripe about the city services.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Well, city services. I know a lot of the guys that work. Like the city trash guys.
Yeah.
They lose about an hour of productivity every day just driving from their facility to get to like the east side of Lake Forest. And it used to be when they were on Laurel, the guys driving the lawn tractors, they would just drive the tractor on the city streets to get to West Park, South Park, wherever. And now all that equipment isn't allowed on 60, so it's all going to be trailers. So the city had to buy a bunch of trucks and trailers, and again, it's so inefficient.
And they don't use that equipment anyways because they don't maintain the fields. That's why we're getting turf fields. Oh.
Yeah, well, it's like even where I live, my cul-de-sac is, the city talks about how, look, we have less people working and we're more productive. Well, you look at my cul-de-sac, it's cut every week by Mariani during the summer under contract with the city. So, there are a lot of contractual things that they don't mention. But if you looked at your water bills lately?
Yeah.
Don't want to.
And and I noticed it because I do have a lot of rentals, but actually I just happen to have one right here. On your water bill that used to be water, now has police and fire pension, which used to be $10, is now $20. Refuse collection, which used to be just part of your property taxes, is now $36, and it started at $12 and then went to 24, now 36. And the water customer charge, which didn't used to exist, is now $50.
Oh crap! I thought I just had a water leak in my house somewhere.
No, it's like, so anyway, I'm looking at my last water bill right here, which is $171, and only about
It's
20
nothing.
water. Well, yeah, and it's like, wait, isn't most of that stuff covered under your property taxes? You know, what's the city do with that money?
How do we fix this stuff, Ted?
Well,
Move to
you
Florida?
yeah, you move to Florida and just give up. No, seriously, I think you get, you know, the caucus should do what it was originally meant to do, which was to, you know, find people and recommend them to boards, but not to, you know, politic for them and become they are hyper partisan. And if you run against them, you know, plan on being in a big fight. Because it is almost scary how they will, you know, dump on you and tear you apart.
It's just kind of funny because it's, you know, it's all about volunteerism because that's what these boards and commissions are.
So they say.
Filled with is volunteers, but yet those volunteers that raise their hand are the bad guys, I guess, because they don't ever get. They didn't interview the right way. They didn't know so and so, but that's the whole premise and what makes a successful board or commission is the people that want to do it. Because Ted, I got to imagine when you're on the school board, your packets were pretty large, I would bet, and you had to do a lot of legwork.
Yeah. Well, they were, but unfortunately they weren't big enough because, like I said, we had so much stuff just dropped in our laps in the executive session right before we had to vote. I would much rather have had a big packet at, you know, where you could do research and ask questions
right.
and, you know, call people out. But, you know, and again, that's a board that we allowed it to happen.
Right.
And we shouldn't have. You know, we should have just said, you know, we're going to table it until we have time to, you know, review and come to the right decision. And, you know, there were some decisions made that weren't, you know, properly thought out.
Ted, why don't there's a bunch of recruiters in town. Why don't they just have one of them donate their time to professionally interview these people for the positions or pay them something to do it versus, you know, dealing with people that aren't professionals at it, that you deal with this crap that's going on. I know the Caucus has been around 86 years, but if they're just an HR team or a recruiting group, why don't you just actually get a recruiting group?
You know, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Like I said, I think the caucus is well intended and serves a useful purpose in identifying volunteers and, you know, convincing people to run. But at the same time, when they go, okay, these are our chosen, and we're going to, you know, fight like hell and be hyper partisan and, you know, burn down the people who run against them, because like when I ran, they didn't have much to throw at me, but I still got sued. You know, still had to fight, had to raise my own money to run against, you know, just buying those yard signs and, you know, magnets and just running around.
I think, Pete, to answer your question a bit, yeah, I think they, you know, it could be successful with it, but I think the whole part of the caucus system and is the neighborhood type, you know, with the wards and all that. It's you and I. This is in Utopia Caucus, but you and I are volunteering, want to help out and want to help interview and put people on there.
Right.
It all means good, and it's you and I. We're the citizens. We're asking our citizen neighbors to be a part of it, but it's just that is gone. It seems like it's starting to slip away because it's more political, and it's not any, and it's not any longer, like the first ward. It's just the people in the first ward. It's just not that anymore, and it's who can I get on there, or how can I make myself better. And that's the sad part about where I think the caucus is going, where it should be more, we all have one vote, we're citizens, and this is how our process is, and let's make the best of it and get the best people. But it's no longer let's get the best people, let's get my buddy.
Yeah.
No, that's totally what it is. And it comes down to basically the caucus becomes one party system, and that's not democracy. You really want.
And I guess I'd say, what you're saying, Ted, is, way back when it was the old "I want to see a boys club" thing and all that, but there was less people in the community, and those people were typically the business people that knew everything worked well that way. It was a smaller community, as much as you want to say it's country club type stuff, but those people were the ones that were running the town, and which is fine. Now it's not like that. It's kind of a good old boy network, so to speak.
No, it's a girls'
but
club.
It's not. Well, it's not. It's more of, who do you know? Who do I know? How can we get our like people on here? And that's where I think it's fallen short. And again, I keep saying this, it's just the boards and commissions are a reflection of how well the caucus committee is doing. When you have strife on boards and commissions, that's just a byproduct of not getting the right people. Or when you have contempt, that's a byproduct of not getting the right people. Because I got to tell you, Ted, I don't understand why you did such a great job as a school board member for 8 years. If you can go back in the Wayback Machine, why the hell and how the hell did you fall through the cracks of the caucus?
Yeah. Well, again, it's just,
yeah. What was your interview process like? How did that, if you can remember?
Yeah, actually, when I interviewed for my second term as a caucus candidate, my interview was about 2 minutes.
Right.
In front of
what
the
about
group,
your first interview? Did you ever interview the first time you ran?
No, because I didn't believe I needed their permission to run. So I just said, things are messed up, and I'm going to run as an individual, not as, and the caucus, when you think about it, is a one-party system, which that becomes, I think, an issue because they become so myopic in their, thought processes. It's like our way or the highway. And as you alluded to, it becomes a good old boy or good old, girl network where, and a lot of people join the caucus as newbies in town. You see the committee of 40 or whatever it is. And so many of them are just moved into Lake Forest. Yep. And, they use it as a social club to meet people, gain influence, and
resume filler.
History. And really, Lake Forest has a lot of history and a lot of things that are buried that, you only know, as Skoo will tell you, if you've been around to, live it and see it. So, I think the caucus still has a good role to play, but I think they've kind of lost their track. And actually, when I ran for my first term, I don't want to mention names, but the caucus president at the time didn't like the attacks they were doing on me. And he was calling me in the background going, hey, giving me heads up on stuff and go, hey, watch out for this and that. Here's what they're saying. And so there are really good people in the caucus that believe in doing the right thing. And then again, there are other people that use it as a stepping stone for their, own advancement within the community, whatever that is.
I think it's time has run its course is just my 2 cents. Maybe 50 years ago, but now it's a bunch of wasted energy, and we're not getting the best people in the positions. Now we can talk about the AAA bond rating. That's all I hear all the time is bond rating, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're in a rich community, that comes, if you didn't have it, it'd be what the heck,
Heck, yeah. So I don't know. If you can spend 10 million for artificial turf, you can spend 250 grand to get a professional recruiter in to find these people. And then how are you going to find these volunteers? Advertise it on the community website, the city page, right? We need these people for these positions.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
it's like the mayor, is normally selected from the aldermen. So again, it's the good old boy network, and and they can do a lot of damage just looking the other way when you have a city manager who's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to a lobbying firm when he doesn't have the right to spend more than 25,000 without going before the board and explaining himself. So, but nobody brought it up because they don't like, to bring up stuff that's not good. They'd rather just talk about, like you said, the AAA bond rating.
yeah. So this is this are you talking about the turf consultants, Ted? Or what are you talking about, this consultant?
The
train.
consultant was not a consultant; it was a lobbyist who was pushing to get the third railroad track in the fourth ward. But yeah, that kind of thing. It's going against what the people's wishes. But apparently, some of the businesses out on 60, the corporate headquarters were pushing for it. So it was really against the community, and for these people who wanted to be able to pull in employees from Milwaukee and Milwaukee suburbs as well as Chicago suburbs. If you had an Amtrak stop that could get people to the West train station, quickly. And you even see it at the East train station where there's buses, that take people at the Granger and to and from, running shuttles. So it is effective if you want to get people on public transportation, but it's not worth doing it against the will of the community when it makes a material impact on.
Well, you talk about the will of the community, yet when there's a mayoral election, you get 2,700 votes. I mean, it's politics only matters when it affects you, right, Ted?
Correct. Well, like I said, I ran because I thought things could be done better and more transparently. And
you won because you were educated about it. You took the time to look into stuff, and a lot of this, unfortunately,
I did. And just knowing the history of Lake Forest, like the City Hall building, the City Council voted to tear that down back in the 80s. They wanted to build a really nice building there. And it was just community outrage that pulled it back from the brink of destruction. Right. And,
I also,
kind of history.
Also think, though, when there is an uncontested or a contested election, it is critical for whoever's running to be someone like you, whether they have a knowledge of the community, lived here, or what they're running for, and understanding what they're running for. Because a lot of these times, these contested elections, people are running because they're like, well, I hate this person or whatever. And then they have no background in anything, and they get crushed by the caucus. And then the caucus gets this, pumped up chest attitude, like, here, we won again. And it's like, you really didn't win because the person that ran had no clue what they were doing. A bunch of people said, Pete, you should run. It's like, oh, okay.
Larry Fitzgerald.
No offense to Lori, but and it's like people like Ted, actually, you won. And there's a reason you won, because more people voted because they listened to it and like, hey, this guy makes sense. Let's put him on there. But I think that's where the caucus gets this false, like I said, chest pumping. Like we always beat these contested elections, and not really. When you have really a candidate that does really know what they're talking about, you're not too successful at that winning. And then what they do is like, hey, Ted, you're on our side now.
Well, which was kind of funny, but so I wasn't on their side, then I was, and then I wasn't. But even the
you've always been, Ted, because you're a resident.
Well, yeah, I'm a member of the caucus, and I can't find my caucus ring, but guess I never had it. But like even let's
You
do
got a
better.
ring.
Those people were good people, but they were painted as crazy loons that had an agenda.
Yeah.
And actually they did have an agenda, just like I had an agenda, and the agenda was let's do better, and the community can do better.
Right.
Yeah. The only people that won were the sign makers.
Yeah. And, hey, I got some exercise if you want to buy one.
Oh my
So
God.
I guess Pete, when you
No,
ask
my wife makes everything out.
I guess Pete, when you say how do we fix it, it's been 86 years, time for a change. Yeah, maybe it is, but in the interim, the public has to understand what's going on and has to, if they want to volunteer, is to go to your ward chairman and say you want to be a part of it and push the issue. And the people on the caucus committee, if you're not showing up to meetings, those people, that's the problem. You start knocking people off that aren't showing up to meetings, so that defeats the whole thing, the whole purpose. So
you have an alderman meeting and you got a dozen people not showing up. That's just
and that's the whole point. Is like, there's it's not the exec council, and then they're crazy in their own sense, but it's the 36 other people on the caucus that were voted by their peers to represent their ward to put and vet and volunteers to be on boards and commissions. But when you can't have an interview because three of the 9 people decide to show up, those people, ward chair should be taking off those people that aren't showing up to meetings and then finding other people to get on there. And that's the problem.
But we can't find anybody to replace them.
Well, everybody's replaceable. As we find out.
Well, Pete, here's the thing. We can't find any because no one wants to go and do the legwork. That's my whole point. Is like, if you want to be a chairman of the ward, this is what you have to do. And if you want to be on a board or commission, this is what you have to do. If you get a 25-page packet to review and ask questions before the meeting, and you don't do it, you derail the meeting.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, that is so true. Again,
and there's more people doing that than not.
Yeah, I go back to my main premise, which is the caucus does a good job finding people to serve on boards, but when it becomes a one-party system and you go against them, that's when you see the fangs and the claws come out, and they become, an overbearing power, and they do have a lot of power, which is unfortunate.
Ted, check this out. You say one-party system. I looked at the voting records of the 43 people on the caucus. Okay. When you look at it as a whole, the regular caucus members, it leans Republican. The executive board, you know how many Republicans are on the executive board, Ted?
I'm guessing about 0.
Yeah, 0. Okay. So you can say it's not political. Maybe that's a coincidence. I don't know, Ted, but
probably not.
When it all comes down to who's picking the vice president, because they turn into the president. You get that fixed. You do a background check, just like you would on Ted Moorman, on the vice president today that's turning into the president. If it's good enough for Ted, it's good enough for the vice president. It's going to be the president.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I appreciate them doing a background check on me and finding nothing. It just means I'm good to go. But when I got my top secret clearance, the FBI did a background check on me too, and
that's funny.
They were okay with me.
Yeah, Ted, I think we got to bring you back on, man. You think you'll come back on with us?
No, I'd love to. You guys are who to chat with.
We're not bad. We're not bad.
Yeah, no, it's well, like I said, Skoo and I go way back, and
I'm trying to catch up,
as well as Pam Kreiswalker. And
she wanted me to ask you 2 things, but we'll wait till that show.
Hey, Ted, thanks for coming on the show today, man. We're going to bring you back.
Okay, well, thank you. No, you guys are, and and I'll have my high tech Perfect packing,
Your
social
tech
media
person.
stuff working better.
Oh, high tech. Your high tech is good enough for us, Ted. Hey, thanks for listening to the Lake Forest Podcast. Please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and smash that like button on Facebook, Instagram, and follow us on Twitter. Let us know what you'd like to hear about in the upcoming shows. Again, I'm Pete and can be reached at pete@lakeforestpodcast.com. The link will be in the podcast notes. On behalf of my co-host, Skoo Walker, we thank you for listening, and we thank our Patreon sponsor, Shark Guy Beach Fishing. They're the premier South Florida beach fishing experience out of Longboat Key, Florida. Their world-renowned captains not only put you on the fish, but they'll help you and your family make a memory of a lifetime. Check them out on Facebook or sharkguybeachfishing.com. Shark Guy is your guy. We'd also like to say thanks to our Patreon supporters, Reverend Luke Beck from the Church of the Holy Spirit, Matt A., Elizabeth B., Costa Lance. Hey, if we don't talk to you all, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
Domo
Christmas.
Origato Atto. Cue the music.